While we may not know the extent, we do know the coronavirus pandemic has been damaging to all children. Among the issues, mental health and anxiety concerns, education disparity, and food insecurity. The Save the Children organization has released a report outlining many of the struggles COVID-19 has caused for kids across the U.S. It has also ranked the best and worst states for children during the pandemic. The best include Minnesota, Utah, Washington, and New Hampshire. The worst states for children during the pandemic have been Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and New Mexico. Betsy Zorio joins me now to break down the information in the report. She's the Vice President of U.S. Programs and Advocacy for Save the Children. Betsy, welcome. Great to have you with us. So much information in this comprehensive report. But let's start with this. 6 million more children are experiencing hunger because of the pandemic. This means there are now about 17 million children facing hunger, which is just unbelievable in a country as wealthy as ours. What needs to be done to get these children the food they desperately need?
That's absolutely right. And thanks for having me on and for bringing attention to this issue. You're absolutely right that 6 million more children are hungry now. But when you think about that, that means 11 million children were hungry in America prior to the pandemic. And that's really unacceptable for a country that's as wealthy as ours. We know that tens of millions of children in this country rely on school for breakfast, lunch, and sometimes even dinner. And again, that's not acceptable in this country. It's time for us to make a real investment in proven anti-hunger programs, including SNAP and WIC. And we're calling on the U.S. government to invest in those programs at more appropriate levels in this next stimulus package and then going forward.
So is there direct aid in this package that's currently being addressed in Congress for these hunger programs that you mentioned? Do you know?
Yes, we're looking for a 15% increase in SNAP benefits, as well as an expansion and extension of a program called Pandemic Electronic Benefits Transfer. It's a program that also helps families to make ends meet during this time. We're also looking for Congress to pass an extension of or rather an expansion of the child tax credit, which by some estimates would cut child poverty in half. So those programs we see as being vital to lifting families out of poverty and to ensuring that they have enough resources to put meals on their table.
Absolutely. This just seems so incredibly crucial. Let's move on now to children's mental health. How is the pandemic impacting the mental health of our nation's kids? And how is the declined mental health of many parents and caregivers hurting their children?
Well, Save the Children's report specifically examines the mental health of parents and caregivers, which we know has a direct impact on children's mental health. And our report found that 3 in 4 parents and caregivers in America have experienced high levels of anxiety. They're feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge at least several days a week. Many are also reporting signs of depression, and that's very troubling to us. Again, we know that that has a trickle-down effect on children. If children are seeing mom and dad anxious and afraid, it makes children anxious and afraid. So we're very concerned about what's happening for children right now, especially during these prolonged absences from school. We all know how children, especially young children, really crave routine. And the reality is they haven't had a normal routine in going on a year.
And of course, the coronavirus pandemic has had a devastating impact on children's education. I mean, we're all aware of that, and this is something that is affecting children of, every economic background. Talk to us about the decline in learning outlined in the report.
That's right. And we all often say at Save the Children, if kids are hungry, they can't learn. So you have this hunger crisis that's been compounded by the pandemic and has been then exacerbated by a lack of access to basic tools. So our report has found that at least 1 in 4 children does not always have the tools they need for distance learning. Low-income students in particular struggle. They are less likely to have a conducive learning environment at home, like a quiet space or access to devices to do this distance learning. In the rural communities that Save the Children serves, this is especially problematic. Those communities oftentimes don't even have access to high-speed internet. They're not even able to access it. Even if they could afford it, it's not an option in their communities. So you can imagine the significant gaps in achievement that are happening over the past year. We know that even during summer, children can lose progress on reading and math. we're talking about an entire year where children have been out of regular schooling and have not been in the most conducive learning environment.
Betsy Zorio, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us some of the finer points of this important report. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.